Hi, I just want to make sure everybody can hear me out there. And send a message in the chat if you can't hear me. I want to welcome everyone to the Tropical Fish Club of Burlington.
There is a slight delay.
I want to welcome everyone. Okay, so I guess there's a delay, and that's, affecting me, of course, but I want to welcome everyone to the Tropical Fish Club of Burlington. On a cold, snowy February night in 1989, more than 50 hobbyists gathered at the South Burlington Library for the very first meeting of the Tropical Fish Club of Burlington. And there's a handful of the originals that still attend meetings today. That was 35 years ago, and with some ups and downs, the club has survived and prospered. When the Potomac Valley Aquarium Society announced that 2022 was going to be their last CatCon, besides crying, Rob Hintz and I hatched an idea that maybe TFCB should host it, and the TFCB board agreed wholeheartedly. The All-Aquarium Catfish Convention will continue with the Tropical Fish Club of Burlington hosting the 10th one at the Delta Hotel in South Burlington, Vermont, November 1st through the 3rd. We are thrilled with our world-class speaker lineup, including Hans Sievers, Daniel von Konveterlen from Germany, Håkan Hagensen from Norway, Oliver Lucanis from Quebec, and Eric Bodrock and Regina Spotty from Pennsylvania. And each will be presenting all new materials in their seminars for us. We have a full vendor room. CatCon's trademark Friday night Spree on 3 will become Fun on 1 in Vermont. A microbrew tour Friday, the banquet with keynote speakers Hans Sievers, 2 rare fish raffles, hospitality suites, and the giant Sunday auction. That all means lots of social interaction with fellow aquarists. Come share your interests, learn from others, and undoubtedly take home some new and interesting fishes. We are excited to announce that it's official. Registration is now open. Yay. You can register for all aspects of CatCon and make hotel reservations at our discounted rate. The link is tfcb.org/catcon-2024. We owe thanks to so many that are working to make this convention happen, and I want to specifically mention and thank our major event sponsors: Amazonas Magazine, Cobalt Aquatics, Prestige Aquatics, and Swiss Tropicals. Look them up online and find out what they have to offer our hobby, and please tell them how much you appreciate their support of CatCon. That is so important for them to hear. But most importantly, support them. Try their products. Amazonas is a world-class magazine. Prestige Aquatics offers unusual livestock for sale online and has a well-stocked brick-and-mortar store in Paducah, Kentucky. Cobalt Aquatics produces custom-made food and high-end heaters along with many other products. And Swiss Tropicals is known for their superior Porette sponge filters and other unique jet lifter aquarium supplies. These 4 companies go above and beyond our hobby, and we should do the same to support them. To kick things off, we are pleased to have Luiz Tencatt tonight as our guest speaker. Luiz is remote in Brazil, where he's based, and will share what he does as a scientist, working with the local fish, and specifically the process of describing a new species of catfish. The talk promises to be a good mix of science and hobby-specific information. Luiz is a very sought-after speaker and has spoken at many catfish-specific and hobby events around the world and has written numerous papers and articles. We're fortunate to have him presenting this new program for us tonight. You can support Luiz's fieldwork by making a donation directly to him through PayPal. It's luiztencatt@hotmail.com. TFCB will be the first to make a donation tonight. And Luiz will be fielding questions at the end. So without further ado, Luiz.
Thank you. Let me share my screen here. Can you see the slides? I can't read right now, so if someone can just say that's okay, please. Can you hear me? Yep.
Oh, sorry, I was on mute. Sorry, Luis. Yes, we can see it, but it's not in presentation mode. It's
Okay.
the
And
one
now,
slide and then the slides on the left.
is it okay right now? I am presenting in the presentation mode right now. Can you see it in presentation mode?
Yeah, I think that looks good.
Yeah, that's great. Well, good evening, guys. I'm very happy to be here with you tonight. I want to thank David and Janine for this invitation. It's a lovely moment for me to speak with you guys and talk about what I do. And this is much more than a work. It is some kind of passion or mental illness, maybe. But I'm really happy to be here with you guys. Thank you very much for the Tropical Fish Club of Burlington. I am really happy with this opportunity, and thank you very much for supporting my work. So, as David asked me, I will try a little bit different talk today. It's about the process of which we run to propose a new name for a species. It's in a nutshell, it's basically this. So we are going to see what exactly I do to propose the new names, and also to do the other works related to taxonomy that are not exactly describing new species. So what exactly is taxonomy? Taxonomy is a very interesting part of the biological science that is really interesting in describing, recognizing, and showing the limits of the biological groups. We call these groups taxons, or taxa in plural. What exactly is a taxon? It's a biological group which you can assign to a rank, a taxonomic rank. So we have here some examples of some of the ranks we often use. So we have the broader one, which is the domain. And so when we go down in this scale here, you see the last stage is the species level. So in theory here, we are dealing with the species level being the most restrictive taxon. Some may have the idea of the subspecies concept, but here we work till species level. Okay, so we consider here the species the most restrictive taxon.
Luis, you're still showing the first slide. Did you mean to go to the next one yet?
Yeah,
There we go.
I am in the...
Okay, that looks good.
Can you see it?
Yes, that looks good.
Okay, so here you can see the broader taxon, which is domain. Here you can see the more restrictive rank, which is a species. As I told you before, some may argue that we have the subspecies level, but we work to species level, at least in the group we study. So here, if my slide doesn't change, just let me know, please. I'm showing now 4 guys. Can you see it?
No, we see the box down in the lower right.
Okay, so
Exactly.
I think we have to change. I think we have to change the way I am sharing the screen. Let me see. I think. Can you see the presentation again?
Yes. that looks better. That's in presentation mode. That looks good.
So you're seeing 4 guys now?
Yes.
That's great. So here we have the 4 main taxonomists that work with Callichthyidae in the last years, so in the last decades. So here we have Han Nyssen and Isaac Spruker. So we have here from the 60s to the, I think, last article. I think I'll count Isaac's last article, which is 2001 maybe. And then we have Roberto Reis, who work with the Callichthyidae, which are the Oplos. So the bigger ones, right? As they are not really big, but the bigger ones, Callichthyidae. And then Marcelo Brito, who work with Corydoradinae. And here we have the guys who laid the foundation of what we do now. So Han Nyssen and Isaac Spruker did tons of descriptions and important works. Roberto made a very impressive anatomic work in his phylogeny in 98. And Marcelo also, some years later in 2003, published a very important work. So we have now, what I do now is based on the foundation these guys did. So these are the most responsible for what I do now, basically. So how we find them? This is a very interesting part of my work. So finding new species, and when we go to the field, of course we want to catch nice fishes, but new species are every time it's a different way of happiness. You know, the most boring way of discovering a new species is through the examination of dead fishes in museums and fish collections, which are very important, of course, but it's not exactly like being on the field, right? So we can find till today new species in collections. So I did this a lot in the beginning of my story with taxonomy. I traveled basically to whole Brazil and some collections outside Brazil, and I tried to look everything. And yes, I was able to discover some new species, but most of them were discovered in a different way, which is basically related to the hobby. Yes, I consider today the hobby the most important income of information regarding the species of Corydoradinae. There's no discussion about this. So we want to go to the field and catch them. It's pretty clear for us that considering the big number of coded species, and it's only increasing every year, it's obvious for us that we have much more new species coming to aquarium, to local fish clubs and conventions and meetings than collections. Most of these is because traveling to catch these fishes are very expensive, and it's not exactly easy to find them. So what we do now is we try to track from the posts and try to talk with the guys, with the local guys who are fishing them to export. So we have here an example of what I do to go to nice places to find new species. We have here a map of South America, and then, for example, we track collecting trips, and then we see this red area, which was very, very well sampled. So what we want to do is to go right here. So that's the most interesting way of going into the field and finding new species. You go to places no one else have gone before. So this is one of the ways we can do it. The other way is talking with people from the hobby, because, well, the exporters know where to find the species. And after the changes in the law, we have now a better relationship with the exporters. So they want the species to be described so they can be legally exported much more easy. So what we have here is a small sample of what is coming from the Rio Tapajós. I think you guys have heard about this place before. It's a large river, but we are talking about a very specific region in Pará state in Brazil, in the Amazon. And so we have very interesting new species popping up from there basically every day. So not only for cories, maybe you guys are very interested in catfishes, but if you look to other groups of cichlids and tetras and so on, you see that every day we are seeing new species coming from the Rio Tapajós basin. So this place is really special. And then we had the idea of making the Rio Tapajós project. So we're traveling to there since 2018 and 19. Sorry. So we have a very, very important expedition funded by the Corydoras World RAP, which was a very important initiative in my life. So it helped me a lot. We did a very important travel who ended in the description of the 3 species from the Diamantine, the Corydoras xanthos, Hypnos, and Psamatos. And we just had the second one, very big expedition funded by All-Aquarium Aquatics and Greater Pittsburgh Aquarium Society by Eric Bodrock. I'm really happy he's here because he will basically see a little bit of the results of this expedition. So we were there recently in the last year, and this is a very interesting and peculiar place in Brazil. So if the fishes are coming from Jacareacanga, we are going to go there and catch them. Okay, so the Rio Tapajós is really big. You can't just go and in random places. You have to know the right places. And Jacareacanga is the right place for Corydoras. Here you can see I am living in the star here. And then I traveled to Santarém in Pará by airplane and took a car to Jacareacanga. We cannot do the direct travel because there is no road directly to Jacareacanga. So we have to go to a bigger city in Pará and then go by car. It's a long road by car. There is no pavimentation, and the road is not exactly that good because it's the Transamazonica road. It's a very good road if it's not raining, but if it's rainy, it's chaos. So we got there. It was, for me, a 2,000 kilometers travel. But what we got from there? We got possibly here, we have very positive identifications here. I think we have pretty clear Corydoras bifasciatus, which I think to be the CW135. And we also have something which is basically like Corydoras pygmeus. Some people are thinking they are very, very different, but to be honest, I have the specimens here with me, and I was not able to split them. So I really think it's Corydoras pygmeus, but we are going to investigate further. They're basically more yellow in life, but this is it. And then we got these about the undescribed ones, right? So we have tons of them. Some of them we are grouping together because we ended up discovering that they may constitute a single species. That snoot variation is not exactly what it seems to be. And, well, there is a single one which called our attention. Here we have the Corydoras CW83, because I had material from the single compatible with the species, and so we found a population in the Rio Tapajós basin. So this is really interesting. Is this a new species? Is this CW83 from the Tapajós equal to the one from the single? That was a very important question to answer. And here we are going to use the CW83 example, okay? So this is the fish. It's a pretty beautiful, pretty fish, beautiful. You can see here a pair, right? So we have This is Hans Ever's photograph, so it I don't need to mention anything, right? It's a beautiful fish. And how exactly we do to answer these questions? So is it a new species? They are the same species, the one from the single, the one from the Tapajos. So what we do a hypothesis test. This is basically how science works. This is not something from the taxonomy. It's something from the scientific method. It's something you do to test everything you want in science, you know? So we have our hypothesis, which is it's a new species. It seems to be. And then we have the age zero, which is the contrary of what we are assuming. So Corydoras CW83 is not a new species. So we are going to test hypotheses with these two main ideas. But the right way to do this, at least, is we don't try like crazy to prove we are correct. That's not the way good science is done. We test hypotheses trying to prove them false and not right. So we are going to presume this is correct, and we are going to put this on test. So we are going to forget a little bit about our hypothesis and work with the other possibility. Okay? We do this because when you try to prove you're correct, the first evidence agreeing with what we're saying will feel enough for you. So that's not how good science is done. You want to try hard to prove what you think it's false. And then if you don't get this opportunity, maybe you're correct. So let's test our hypothesis. What we have here, we have this is the holotype. And what we have here, we have to compare these specimens with all nominal species of the genus. So everything within Corydoras must be tested in this. So we are going to try to fit this species in all available names. Okay? Why not only the valid ones? Because maybe some species under other species, which we call synonym, maybe prove valid. So we need to test all nominal species. And it's very important to note that what exactly is a species? What's exactly the identity of a species? You need to look at the primary type. This is very important because these primary types, they are basically the individuals that will be the name holders. So you have a single specimen which represents the taxon. This is very important. So it's the model of that species. So it's very important to you to look at this specimen. A lot of people today are describing species like crazy without not even seeing a single primary type or even a paratype. So this is really something that bothers me a lot because it's basic taxonomy. You need to look at the holotypes and lectotypes. Well, it's the basics. So you have two basic possibilities when you do that. You may have a match or you have no match. So if you have a match, it basically means it was impossible to refute the idea. So we have to understand that when we are looking, that species that individual you think it was from a new species, it's a perfect match for an available name. So if it's a match, you have to understand that this is not a new species. It's a described species. So this is also great because you have a good ID. Sometimes people send some photographs and see us making some IDs, and it's not exactly that easy when you have some species. So some of them are really easy to recognize, but others you need to look further to recognize. So if you did this, of course, this is not something we do the whole process every time, because we have, when you do this for a living, you have a database in your mind, so you can see things without going from the beginning of the process. Okay, so that's okay. Some people get really frustrated when they have a match, but for me, it's a great thing because you have a good idea. When it's possible to refute the idea contrary to what you are proposing, you may have a new species. So the whole idea here is to propose basically a formula of this taxon. So every species have its own formula. What I mean with this is there is a group of features that will define this species. You may use different sources. I'm using morphology here, but you may use other sources along with morphology. Of course, morphology is mandatory because that's the way the zoological code suggests, but people may have other informations, molecular information, for instance. So here we have, if you found that these individuals are not compatible with any other species available, so you may show to people why you came to this conclusion. And this is basically the diagnosis. It's the most important part of the work, much more important than the introduction, than some crazy discussions. So we have to have a very solid diagnosis, okay? So when you have this formula, sometimes you have the luck to find a very different species with a very different feature, but generally we find a group of features. You know, it's a unique combination. So when you have simultaneously those features, you form that taxon. In a few words, this is what a diagnosis is. You know, you will present this in the work. So the work of a taxonomist is basically find, describe, and present these formulas. This is what we do. You know, that's the most important part of the job. So finding is very important, describing is very important, and presenting, which is basically publishing, is very important too. So let's start with the find part. The case of Corydoras SPCW83. They have a very interesting feature, which is the mask. That mask you see here, only with the mask you can eliminate a lot of congeners, okay? Also, they have this dark background color with this bluish glow, and it's a deeper pigmentation, and we have a more superficial pigmentation of, you can see here some vertical stripes and blotches here. So we have the darker pigment in a deeper layer, and this more superficial pigmentation, the more superficial layer. This blackened background with darker spots, it's not something you see in this congener so easily. Another very important things are they don't have that round dark blotch around dorsal fin, and they also don't have a peduncular blotch, so a blotch in the base of the caudal fin. So sometimes not having something is important. It's important information. So let's compare with this one. Here you can see we have a mask, but we have a dark blotch on the base of dorsal fin, which is very common. Several congeners may present this. And we have a clearly pale background color with dark spots, markings, stripes. And here you can see a very different pattern. And generally, the background color is not dark, not dusky like that. Here you can see blotch and caudal peduncle. So sometimes not having something is important information. Here we have another interesting information in these species. Here you can see in A, there is, I think you may be used to this term, it's the third rictal barbel. It's an area in the corner of mouth with a fleshy flap. And in our species, it's a triangular aspect. Okay, and in other congeners, it's a barbel-like structure. So comparing with Corydoras geoffroy, you can see it's a longer and barbel-like structure, while this is somewhat triangular flap. Okay, this is another important feature of this species. And here we found a nearly exclusive feature, which is a poorly ossified hypobranchial tooth. This bone is part of the branchial arches, and to be honest, there is a single species sharing this feature, which is Corydoras defluviatilis, which is very, very different from Corydoras sp CW83. And also an interesting feature here is they have pharyngeal teeth. Okay, it's common to many fishes. And lineage 1, Corydoras, which is the case of this species, we have 3 or 4. Here you can see 4 series of teeth. In all other Corydoradinae, you see 2 at most. So here we have 3 or 4. In this specific case, we have 4 series of teeth. And even in adult specimens, we have a poorly ossified hypobranchial tooth. This is a very peculiar feature, and we used it to characterize this new species. So, considering we have this group of features, this exclusive group of features, what it means, they don't share this with any other species. Some feature, yes, but not at the same time. This is quite important here. So you may share, but not all of them at the same time. So you may have similar formula, but you cannot have a perfectly matched formula. So if you have a perfect match, you have an ID, not a new species. Here you have that's the whole idea of the scientific process. So we have evidence to discard age 0, which was contrary to our hypothesis, our initial hypothesis. So automatically, we offer our hypothesis as a possible explanation. It's not exactly saying that we have the truth in our hands, because science is not exactly about seeking truth. This is a misinterpretation of the thing. We want to answer some questions through a standardized method, which works really well. So this is how science works, okay? Sometimes we are very passionate and we see something very different and we want to say it's completely different. It's a new species. It happened to the Corydoras pygmeus, for instance. A lot of people are saying it's completely different, but in a very short analysis in the laboratory, you can see it's quite possibly just a small variation in color pattern in life, because the anatomy of the fish is exactly the same. The overall color pattern, it's very similar, so I don't think we have something different there. Maybe with people saying it's obvious, it's different. You can see that easily because it's golden, it's yellow, and that's not exactly how it works, okay? So now you can celebrate. You have a new species. What we do now? You describe. So we found, and now we are going to describe. So as the way we test hypotheses, we have specific methods to describe a new species. Here you have a small schematic drawing of my 2022 article on Aspidoras, which we provided these drawings showing how we measure the specimens, we measure them, we count plates and teeth and everything. And we also do a very deep osteological analysis, which is basically what I do most. I devote, I think, much more than the half of my time to look into bones and trying to find some answers through them. And to be honest, I don't stop to being surprised by them, because there is a lot of information hidden in the skeletons. And well, I mean, we had a great improvement from the past works with these new information. So you see here, this is a little sample of what we look in the fish. Here you go. We also look at color pattern, of course. In this case, we are going to look in color pattern in alcohol, which is very important because we work mostly with dead fish. Okay, so here we have a specimen from the Rio Xingu and the specimen from the Rio Tapajós. You may find some small differences in these two specimens, but remember, a species is not exactly a single specimen. Although a single specimen represents the name, the species is a group of individuals. Okay, so we have to look to the group of individuals, especially when you have here a very distant region from one another. You see that they are quite distant. So it's expected that they have some minor differences, but in general, they are basically the same. Okay. We also have to look to color pattern in life. So this, I hope Eric is seeing this, because this is one of the results of our last expedition. We had these photographs. Here you can see some kind of variations in color pattern. These specimens were captured in the very same place, in the very same time, for the very same people. So it's expected that it's quite variable. Okay, so we have here more dusky specimens and more pale, but you see, especially in preserved specimens, that there is a lot of deep pigments here. This is something for future studies, histological studies, possibly, because we have seen clearly that we have very different layers of pigmentation. Okay, and as you can see, the mask is not exactly so visible when they are alive. Sometimes you have to settle them in tanks to see the mask clearly. And when they are in the field, in the streams, you see that the mask is nearly imperceptible. So it's quite complicated to work only with one information. You have to look to several sources of information. Here we also have the ontogeny. Of course, this is not a complete ontogeny, but we have some stages here, thanks to Hans Evers, of course. So we have at least here 6 stages. So this is a very, very young specimen. And then you have here a juvenile. You can see the dusk pattern is formed earlier in the development. So it's very interesting. Also, we had the opportunity to go to the sites. So thanks to the Greater Pittsburgh Aquarium Society and All at Ball Aquatics, we were here in the Jacareacanga region collecting them. This was a very, very interesting experience because we saw some very interesting things. First, the lineage 1 species, the true Corydoras, they don't live in the same places of the remaining groups of Corydoras. You know, they generally tend to like more fast-flowing sites, which called my attention. And they like to be in small, they have depressions on sand. So they hide in these depressions where the current is not so fast, but they are in the moderate to fast flowing places. This really called my attention. They like these places. And of course, if you want to catch them in good number, you have to go at night to collect. During day, you have 1-2 specimens, and during night, you have dozens. So here you have the geographical distribution of these species. Most of our material comes from the Rio Singo in the region of Belo Monte Dam, sadly. And we have a single record here for the Rio Tapajós. Our question is, this region in between is poorly sampled in many sites. So maybe the species also occurs here. So it's really possible. It's important to remember that here we have some large indigenous lands which are not always accessible for us, and the places are not easy to reach. So this is possibly a case of sampling artifact. Maybe if we do more collecting trips in between, we'll find more populations. It's for me, it's pretty clear that this will be the case. But in any case, we have a lot of species being described from both basins. All right, so you find tons of examples of species occurring in these two basins. This is just another one. So after the descriptions and the results I showed to you, you have to discuss your findings. You may feel free to discuss whatever you want. If you want to focus on color pattern, if you want to focus on anatomy, you go. And well, it's a very delicious part of the article because you're more free to discuss the way you want. And we are doing some interesting discussions in the late articles. And the last one with Steve, we provided a very, very interesting discussion on color pattern. I suggest you to read it because it's a very interesting discussion. And we try to look, and I don't think there is anyone else discussing this at least for freshwater fish in South America. So the only things that's left is to present it. This is a very, very important part that some of my colleagues may I think they can improve in that in some fields because they do a lot of interesting works, but they don't publish. So if you don't publish, it makes no sense in the end because the name and all of the informations will only be available if you publish it. And you must publish you can publish in magazines if you want, but it's not what we want here. We want to do in a scientific way. So we send 2 journals, scientific journals, with double-blind peer review process, which is basically some colleagues will review your article and will decide if it's okay and good enough to be published. This is really nice because you have some interesting insights and information from other people. Sometimes people that never work with the group but are great taxonomists. I will mention one because I don't think he'll be bothered by this, but Mark Sabay was one of the reviewers of my Aspidoris paper, and he provided me one of the most interesting and good reviews. And I don't think Mark ever worked with Corydoradinae, but he made a lot of interesting suggestions, and I followed most of them. So the whole idea is to show to your colleagues, and so they will say if it's good enough for publication. Generally, they will suggest some changes, some improvements, and then if you do everything right, you'll be okay. If you have a yes, which we had, this article was accepted a couple of months ago, as you can see here. It will be published anytime. It means you have proved properly that you have good scientific stuff. Okay. If you receive a no, you can have a lot of explanation for this. First question is this the right journal? If you submit a taxonomic work to an ecology journal, you receive a no, even if you have a brilliant work to present. Okay, so you receive a no. Have you followed the scientific method? Sometimes people want to present new species without looking for comparative material, for example. So you need to have a solid database of comparative material, you know? Your diagnosis is really diagnostic. Sometimes we see overlappings in the features used. So it's normal that people will question you because you need no overlaps to have good diagnosis. So we don't want overlappings. Sometimes you may use features with overlappings from different species, but you have to be very, very cautious because this is not exactly diagnostic, right? You may find a species with the intermediate conditions and you won't be able to place it in any of the options. Okay, so this is quite complicated. And another important thing, do you use the proper language? Sometimes you will receive a no because the article is not well written. So this is why we have to, at least for me, my native language is Portuguese, and I need to use my friends from the hobby to review my articles. Rob McClure has reviewed tons of them. Now Stephen is reviewing all of them. And well, without this help, it would be very difficult because there is always some problems. We have doubts on how we use the language, and so it's very important to use proper language. So it's not exactly about the quality, the scientific quality of your work. Sometimes you are doing something wrong outside the scientific part. And there you go. You have here, it's the proof. Of course, you won't see the name of the species here, but this is a very special species because we choose to make an homage to moms. I always wanted to do this for my mom, and I think it would be unfair with the other guys working with me. So we made a name which will cover all mothers, all loving mothers around the world. And this is a very special work for me. So this is a small way to say thanks to these brilliant women around the world and say we are very grateful for them. And I really hope you are happy with this name. It's a beautiful name. And it's important to mention that all of those coded species are being examined right now, and some of them were obviously confirmed as new, such as the ancestors one, and other ones. The mimetic species of the CW83, which are CW 101 and 102. These are also new, clearly new species, which will be described. And I want to take the opportunity to say that we'll have one of the species named after Eric Bodrock. My dear friend Eric, thank you for believing in my work. You surely deserve this, my friend. So, the real Tapajos is far from being done. Okay, we have a lot of new stuff coming from there every day, basically, and we need to go back. That's something I discussed with my good friend William O'Hara. We have to go back because it doesn't stop. We have these four 191, 2, and 5. These are a trio, obviously new species. And this one is a problem, but it's also another morpho species from the Rio Tapajós. So yeah, it's a very, very interesting place. Okay. And of course, we also have this guy. And I'm trying to negotiate with a fisherman, collecting them, but it's not easy to capture them. I was told that it's a very peculiar species which can only be captured in a short period of each year. So let's see what we can do. We are trying to find it, but I hope to this year to have some specimens for examination, But as I told in the Corydoras thanatos work, it's very similar in general to Corydoras thanatos. So let's see what we have. Well, I hope you enjoyed this talk. These are some of the people who helped me along my journey, and you are all very special to me. I got a little bit emotional every time because you really changed my life. So I just want to say thank you. Thank you very much. And especially to these clubs and guys, you are very special to me, and you are part of my achievements. If you think what I'm doing is making some difference, if you think, if you enjoy the talk, if you think I should go back to Jacareacanga as soon as possible, please consider donating for us. I am an independent researcher here in Brazil. I just have a small room. This is the only place I have. I don't even have a laboratory. I have just a table where I work. And well, it's enough for me, but we don't have a car, we don't have gas, we don't have fuel. The places are in the middle of nowhere. So if you want to help me to continue my expeditions and my work, please consider donating. Okay, every penny counts. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Luis. That was wonderful. Yeah, and if I know TFCB will definitely make a donation, and if everyone else who feels passionate about it and willing to help Luis, that would be wonderful.
Thank you.
I only saw one question come up earlier.
Stevens.
So this was the question that came up. Can you see that, Luis?
Yeah.
Do you have any comment on that?
Well, it's complicated to be sure, but I once had this idea about the zebra corridors, because it's a very weird species, and the place we were in the place several times, and sometimes it seems something man-made. It's an odd species, but I don't think we have the same problem that the plecos have. What we have as a problem in these places, it's not exactly a problem, but it ends up as a problem, is that the indigenous people, they use a natural chemical to fishing. And in the places they fish, you have the death of many species. And the corridors are very affected by this chemical. They have the right to do it, but the damage is very big. So this is something that concerns us about human activity. But I never seen, at least in my experience, these kind of things you see for plecos. I think the most terrible thing is that I heard in the past that you can see in, I think in the United States, there are places you can fish Corydoras sterbi, for example. This is something really crazy but here in Brazil, I never heard about this. The Corydoras today, they are being captured mostly by indigenous people. These very interesting corals we are seeing, so we owe a lot to them. But I never heard about anything similar to plecos. No. Steven? Do you know anyone doing histological studies in Corydoradinae? I think just Eric. Eric Thomas. I think it's the only guy doing this. It would be very important. I was planning to do this for spines because I want to. I think the serrations, they are not exactly homologous. I think we have true serrations and false serrations in spines, and I think with histology we could prove this. But I think histology is something I think only Eric.
If anyone else has questions, feel free to post them. And I'm going to actually put myself on mute and see if there are any questions here in the audience.
I don't think so, Steve. I don't think so. But we can clearly see we have deep pigmentation and superficial pigmentation. This is pretty clear.
Luis,
Yes.
one question from the audience here is, what's the size of the CW83 that you were talking about?
They can reach 60 millimeters standard length. So they're like any other Corydoras lineage 1 species. They can get big, but this is a very beautiful fish. This is a very beautiful fish. Believe me. You want to have them.
And
Genetic studies.
Eric put a question in. So.
Yeah. This we are preparing, as you know. If you're going to attend in March, I'm going to present the article we are going to publish in on the phylogeny of the Corydoradinae with the new classification. And the phylogeny itself was made with molecular data. Eric, we used the UCEs, so the ultra-conserved elements. It was very beautiful to see a phylogeny given the exact same result morphology is showing to us. It was very beautiful for me. So we joined forces and we were going to publish this. The article is nearly accepted. We are trying to fight with one of the editors, and we are just adjusting figures and things like that. But the scientific content is accepted, and this will be published this year. And you have soon 7 genera of Corydoradinae, 7 genera, pretty soon. How long does it take to do a scientific expedition? Well, due to financial motives, we are not able to extend much more than 10 days because the people who work for a month, for example, they have lots and lots of money to do this. So I don't think you're going to see this. It's like 2 crazy guys in the Amazon collecting fish for 10 days. And this for 10 days, we can do a good sampling in the region. And as you saw in the slide, we came back with a lot of new species of Corydoras. And more than 10 days, it starts to get really, really expensive. So for now, expeditions of 10 days is what we are doing.
Here's one from John.
That's a good question. It depends. Sometimes you have very, very rare species, and Oplomyson or a cavefish, you don't want to kill many individuals to do the work. So if you collect a couple of specimens, sometimes it's what you have. We have some banjos, catfishes that you do 10, 20 years expedition to have 1 or 2 specimens. In this case, it's okay. Gelanoglanis, you won't have tons of specimens. You have 1 or 2 if you're lucky enough to capture them. But with Corydoras, it's different because when you find a place, you can have them in good numbers. So I like to use as a parameter 20 specimens. But we described the Corydoras colossus recently with, I think, 12 specimens. I think Stephen can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we had 12 specimens. So if the species is clearly new, if the material you have, you can prove what you're saying with the material you have. You don't need to have a magical number, but the more you have, the better you can describe the variations within the species, which is very important.
Here's another question, Eric.
Econ species descriptions, I have read that some I have longer nose and when raising fine sand. Yes. Yeah. The point here is when we collect in natural habitats, we have a reduction of these factor because we always collect them in groups found in the same place. But the most important thing is sometimes you need to understand exactly what is the difference. It's something with the size of the bone itself or the morphology of the bone. Sometimes you have a slightly longer or slightly shorter snout. This is not exactly enough for you to say it's a different species. In captivity, I have seen a lot of variation in snout size and shape. We found, we are describing another lineage 1 species, which is C53 from Peru, the one similar to Atropersonatus and Sicri. And one of the juveniles we captured in the field, they had a rounded forehead. So it was interesting because I only saw that in aquarium fish, but this is obviously not enough. You can see that this is just a variation, and this is something we need to consider when we work with fish from the aquarium hobby. You need to understand that most times they will present features that they don't present often in nature. I can mention to you the Corydoras thanatos, for instance, the long dorsal fin. We captured tons of specimens, and not even a single one had this elongation in dorsal fin. And I have seen a lot of aquarium specimens with huge dorsal fins. So this is something possibly seasonal. And well, we have to use what we have, of course, but aquarium tank raised fish, you need to look them carefully not to commit any mistakes.
All right, I'm not seeing any other questions here in the audience or on YouTube. So definitely, Luis, I want to give a great big thank you to you for presenting here for us tonight and giving our kickoff for the Catfish Convention, the All-Aquarium Catfish Convention. It's happening here in Burlington, Vermont. In November 1st through the 3rd. Sorry for the delay there. And I guess we'll go ahead and wrap things up. And it's the club's 35th anniversary tonight, so we have a huge cake. Sorry, everyone who's not here in person is not going to get any cake, but we have a pretty good crowd here tonight that will put a good dent in the cake. So.
Thank you very much. Thank you again, David. Thank you, everyone, for seeing me. I hope you enjoyed the talk.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.